So chapter 34 details this tragic incident that happened to Dinah and that affected Jacob's entire family. And this will have long-term consequences on the whole family. Now, before we dig into this chapter, I just want to share one observation with you right up front here, and that is that God is not mentioned at all in chapter 34. In chapter 33, Jacob builds an altar. He calls upon the name of the Lord. Chapter 35, Jacob will build an altar and call upon the name of the Lord. But here in chapter 34, God is not mentioned. There's no mention of Jacob and his family praying. There's no mention of Jacob calling upon God or seeking the Lord for help or comfort or wisdom. And if there is ever a time for a family to draw near to God for help and healing, it would be during a traumatic time like this. But sadly, it seems Jacob and his family don't call upon the Lord in this. Now, to give you just the context and to remind you of the context of where we are in Jacob's life, Jacob and his family returned to the land of Canaan. They settled, remember, outside of the city of Shechem. And the reason that he settles on the outskirts of the city of Shechem is because Jacob is a foreigner, and foreigners weren't allowed to come dwell into the city. They had to stay on the outskirts for that reason. The territory of Shechem belongs to another clan. It belongs to another family, the Hivites. It's their territory. And so Jacob, as a foreigner, he settles on the outskirts of Shechem that belongs to the Hivites. And we saw last week that he bought a plot of land there. So he's out on the outskirts of town. He buys a plot of land. He continues to live there with his family and raise his many kids. And then Dinah reaches an age, she's believed to be a teenager at this point, maybe in her late teens. Now Dinah, verse 1, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. So Dinah now starts hanging out with the daughters of the land of Canaan. Now, what do we know about the daughters of the land of Canaan? Well, what we know is they are not the kind of girls Jacob should allow his daughter to hang out with, as we've seen in Genesis. Back in chapter 24, if you remember, Abraham did not want his son Isaac marrying a Canaanite girl. And so he sent his servant to his homeland of Haran to find a bride for his son Isaac. And then in chapter 28, Isaac didn't want Jacob to marry a Canaanite girl. And so Isaac sent Jacob to Haran to find a bride for himself. And if you remember, Rebekah said to her husband Isaac, I am sick and tired of these local Hittite women. I would rather die than see Jacob marry one of them. The Canaanites were ungodly, they were immoral, and they were depraved. And now Jacob's daughter Dinah is socializing with the daughters of the land. And Jacob is allowing his daughter to do this. He's not stopping her. And as parents, especially parents with middle school or high school age kids, we should know who our kids are hanging out with, and we should not allow them to hang out with kids that would just be an ungodly influence in their lives, kids that are into things that are just immoral and wrong in God's eyes. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, bad company corrupts good morals. And it does. Now, I'm not implying that what happened to Dinah was somehow her fault. I'm just saying here that the Canaanites were known for their sexual depravity. Think of Sodom and Gomorrah. And really, my question is for Jacob, the dad. And the question I would have for Jacob is, why are you letting your daughter spend time with the daughters of Canaan? You know what the Canaanites are like. And this is unsafe for your daughter to go into the city of Shechem and hang out with the people that live there. It's unsafe for her. And you as a father should be protecting her from this. I don't let my wife go to Walmart at night. I don't go to Walmart at night. It's unsafe in my neighborhood to go to the Walmart at night. And Jacob here, as a father, he needs to be more strict with his daughter. Not allow her to do this. But she's going into the city. She's hanging out with the daughters of the land. She's spending her time there. And then verse 2, and when Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, prince of the country, so he's the prince, he saw her, he took her, and he lay with her, and he violated her. So Shechem is the prince of the country. His dad Hamor is the king of the Hivites. So he's it's the most powerful family. It's the ruling family in the land. And we aren't really given the details here of how this happened. We're told that he saw her, he took her, and violated her. And the idea here is by force or without consent. And we aren't told the details of how. We aren't told if this was a random act of violence, and Dinah was a random victim, or if Shechem and Dinah knew each other before this terrible thing happened. Were they together? Were they friends? Was there a relationship? It seems that it was not a random act, and that they did know each other, and that this happened while Dinah was socializing with the daughters of the land. But there's more to this story than Shechem violating Dinah, as awful as that is. After he assaults her, Shechem kept Dinah in his house, more or less as a prisoner. In other words, he kidnaps her and keeps her hostage in his house. And we understand that from verse 26. And so there's not just a violation, as awful as that is. He then keeps her hostage in his house. And that's an important detail to the story. I mean, this is kind of like the stories we hear in the news of late about the schoolgirls in Nigeria that are getting kidnapped and held for ransom. And this is an important part of the story because when Hamor and Shechem go to negotiate an agreement with Jacob, they have Jacob's daughter, Dinah, in their possession as a hostage. So so they're coming now asking Jacob to enter into a covenant and an agreement and combine the two tribes, the two clans, and bring them together and make them one through marriage. But they've got Dinah as a hostage in this negotiation, right? Some commentators believe that Shechem violated Dinah and kept her as a hostage for the purpose of forcing Jacob to agree to this covenant. They see how wealthy and powerful Jacob is. He's viewed as a threat to the Hivites, and so they take this action to force him to enter into an agreement with them. After Shechem violated Dinah, verse 3 says, his soul, Shechem's soul, was strongly attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the young woman and spoke kindly to the young woman. So Shechem was violent and then loving and tender toward Dinah. And unfortunately, this is how more than a few men behave toward women. With violence followed by love and tender words. And that kind of man creates a very fearful wife, a very fearful woman, because she doesn't know when he's going to turn violent again. And so you can sometimes tell, because that wife is very, very skittish around her husband, and he's volatile.